So you are welcome to session 2 of our lecture on Introduction to Comparative Politics. Lecture 1, which we call Introducing Comparative Politics. This is the second part of the session. Now, the main goal of comparative politics, the goal is empirical. We try to examine what is. It's empirical. And we seek to describe phenomenon and also to explain what accounts for the phenomenon or the dynamics, and then to be able to predict similarities and differences across political systems. That is why, we do comparative study. If we do it well, we are able to describe situations and to explain, which will help us to predict. So let's say country A engage in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, activities, and the people were not happy. They resorted to some revolution, and the government was overthrown. Another country also followed similar activities, and in the end, the people were not happy. They overthrew the government. Country C did same, and so you see, through comparative study, we describe the various cases. We explain what led to the coup in country A, what led to the coup in country B, and what have you. And we are seeing some trends. Now, if another country, let's say country F, is treading the same line, what reasonable conclusion can we make? Michael, what can you say about the fate of that country?
It's likely to suffer the same fate as the other one.
It's likely to suffer the same fate. Okay, then that is the prediction we talk about. Through comparative politics, we are able to predict. And this can be realized through the intensive analysis of more cases or one case. Okay, when we systematically examine cases, we can predict. I know countries that followed this particular line of action, they ended up becoming bankrupt. And so if a country is heading towards that same direction, we can predict. That is the goal of comparative politics. It helps us to describe, explain, and then to predict. For example, you can explain an issue going on in a country, maybe using the 5 eyes. Okay, then you want to check the individuals. It helps you to vividly describe and explain phenomena. Now, we do comparative politics to develop theories. Okay, when we observe an outcome across cases, across political systems, across time, across organizations, across sectors, then we can develop a theory. When we talk of a theory tries to explain how things occur in real world. If this thing happens, this will be the outcome. Okay? If this thing happens, this will be the outcome. A typical example of a theory is the relative deprivation theory. The relative deprivation theory has, observing how many societies have come up, how many societies have crumbled over time, or their experiences, if a section of the society is neglected or deprived of a fair share of the national cake, that people or that group end up becoming toxic, sometimes becoming rebels to attack the state, sometimes that area becoming ungovernable, okay, and the people show some kind of attitude towards the state, which in the end doesn't augur well for the said state. Comparativists have observed this over time. Any jurisdiction where a group is sidelined, is not giving some share of the cake and what have you, it ends up not being very well with that society or that country. And how did we come about this? By observing different cases, different jurisdictions, societies, or countries, where those that have systematically been sidelined end up becoming toxic entities or spaces for the society, even becoming ungoverned space. So we develop what we call relative deprivation theory. The theory is called relative deprivation theory, which says that when a group is deprived of certain goods and services, whilst others are getting, no, we have observed over years that there is a systemic way to neglect us vis-a-vis our other people who are always, so that's relative deprivation. So comparative politics helps in theory development. And that is why, so lessons from the relative deprivation theory has helped many contemporary societies, such that when they are crafting their constitution, they make sure that the constitution makes provision for every section of society. So when you take Ghana's constitution, it tries to guard against relative deprivation. It talks about regional balance, even in appointing, ministers or people into the public service, so that there is a fair allocation to all regions and what have you. No group might feel systematically neglected, because if you want to complain about one thing, we say that but this minister is from your area, this and then, so you know that it is not something that is systemic, well orchestrated by the states, but maybe one way or the other, but it's not so systemic that you can vividly say that a group has been neglected. And that is so for many states. They try to guard against or to guard against the relative deprivation because it is not good. So we talk about regional balance, and then even in selecting people into the security forces and the rest, they try to ensure fair share. That is that. So, and these things came about through comparative assessments, which had led to development of theories. Comparison has long been acknowledged as the very essence of the scientific method. In level 100, you learned that political science is a science. Do you still agree? Do you agree political science is a science?
Yes, please.
Fantastic. So if we understand and believe that political science is a science, then, my dear friends, we are also adding that it is comparative politics, or it is comparison, that gives political science its very scientific method. Comparison is the very essence of the scientific method. It is the very essence of the scientific method. It is almost certainly right to argue that theory in the social sciences proceeds largely by comparison. it is through comparison that you can make some meaningful conclusions. Because, well, if you do a single case and you make some conclusions, it might not be applicable to other jurisdictions, but it is just a case. But when we do more comparison, then we really know that, okay, that is the trend, that is the pattern, and that is the issue. It's not about, or it's not only about one particular jurisdiction, but then that is the trend. And then, so comparison is crucial, and the scientific study of the social sciences largely proceeds by comparison. All right. Not to be comparative is to be naively parochial. In the Akan local parlance, they say that Onko bia fuma. Who continue for me? Onko bia fuma. Yes.
Onko
bia fuma. What's onko ni what? Okuyani. So if you have not visited the farms of other people, then you want to brag that you are the best farmer. Because you have 5 acres of yam, or if you have 5 hectares of cocoa, you think that you are the best farmer. Go, some people, their farm is a whole estate. Okay, so through comparative politics, we are able to really know trends and situate some outcomes in this. Not to be comparative is to be naively parochial. Then you are sitting in your corner and you are assuming that it is so for everyone. It is so for every country. No, it is not so for every country or everyone, because you are not comparing. You are naive and you are parochial. All right. The common objective is to generate knowledge, enhance our understanding, and determine successful functional practices so that we could transfer them to other systems. So when you do comparative study, you will know which systems worked well for other jurisdiction and what lessons can be applied to your own country, taking into consideration your context, your culture, and other things to make sure that they suit very well. Okay, so there are some institutions which usually even come to Ghana. They have come here to study about our NHIS, because the way we do our NHIS, they think it is doing well, and so how they will replicate same, or to contextualize it to their country. That is it. You cannot just sit in your country and say that, oh, there is no way that an insurance can be applicable in the health sector. Let's say you are in Zambia, and then you are saying that, oh, there is no way that secondary education can be free. There is no way that secondary education can be free. Let's say you are in Zambia, then you are saying that, well, you are parochial, you are naively parochial, because you have not even searched to know that some countries are practicing that. If you had compared or done comparative, you get to know that some people are doing same. And so then you might want to go there to learn, to understand, and see why it is being successful, the challenges they are facing, and how can you transfer same, or how can you adapt it to your situation, rather than simply say, oh, it is not possible. No one can do this. There cannot be anything like this. And whilst others are doing it elsewhere. But because you don't know, you are just sitting somewhere saying that it cannot be done. All right. Now let's look at the first systematic comparative study that was done. Are we there, comparativist? So,
yes, please.
So the first systematic comparativist will be Aristotle. So all of us, our grandfather is Aristotle, chief comparativist. So the first of such system, one of the earliest examples is the work done by Aristotle. He classified 158 city-states. So note it very well. He classified 158 city-states of ancient Greece. And these 158 city-states, if it were today, we would say 158 or different countries. Okay, let's picture it that way. Each of these city-states, even though they were small settlements, they had variety in the forms of their rule. The way they were governing the people, maybe city-state 1 was governing the people in a much better way. City-state 2 was governing the city, maybe only one person was ruling. City-state 3, many people were ruling. So there were varieties in the form of rules. Now, what approach did grandfather comparativist Aristotle use? The approach. Now, the diversity in their rule provided the ideal laboratory for him to consider which type of political system provided the best in government in terms of stability and effectiveness. So he was looking for stability and effectiveness in government. He wanted to know which form of rule would make a country or a government more stable over time, and which form of rule will make a government more effective. Are you with me? Okay. So what did Aristotle seek to find? Dion, what did he seek to find? Yes. What did he seek to find in his research or comparison of 158 city-states? What did he seek to find? Someone mute your microphone. Yes, Isaac, please start.
Okay, so he sought to find stability and effectiveness.
Good. He wanted to find out which type of political system will make a government more stable and effective. Okay? Are you with me? Hello?
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you. All right. So that was what he sought to find. Now, this is the criteria he used. I'm throwing more light on it because I may ask you somewhere. This is the criteria. Now, Aristotle based his scheme or his comparison on 2 dimensions. The number of people involved in the task of governing, whether only one person was ruling, or few people were ruling, or many people were ruling. So we call it the form and nature of participation. What was the form and nature of participation or for city-state 1? What was the form and participation, So with all the city-states, and how many city-states did he encounter? How many?
158.
158. Good. So he wanted to find out the number of people that were involved in governing in each of these city-states, whether it was only one person ruling, or many people ruling, or few people. Then another criteria or dimension was in whose interest did the rulers rule? So city-state 1. In whose interest was the ruler ruling? Was he ruling in his own interest, or he was ruling in the people's interest? Now, if they were ruling in the common interest, Aristotle calls it the genuine form. Yes, of course. After all, that is the very essence of what government. The people give you their will, their power, their resources through the social contract. And then you have to use the power, the resources, okay, in their interest, in their common interest. That is the genuine form of rule. Okay. Comparativist Moses. What is the genuine form of exercising power or rule? What is the genuine form of exercising power or rule? Or any
Chief
comparativist?
comparativist.
Yes.
So the genuine form of exercising rule is to be sure of if it is in the interest of the people you rule.
Fantastic. Fantastic. Okay. That's the genuine form. Common interest of the people you are ruling. Are you using the power to provide roads for the people, electricity, good quality education, employment generation? I mean, in the common interest or in their own interest. So he's to find out whether or not they were using the power or the resources in their own interest as well. And that he calls it the perverted form. The perverted form. What is the perverted form of exercising power? Comparativist, they say, Daniel, what is the perverted form of exercising power?
Sir, please, I think forcing it on them or without their consent. Yes.
Okay, good. Thank you. Comfort. Otherwise, Isaac O.
So when the interest is in when the purpose of rule is in the interest of those ruling and not to the benefit of the people or the masses.
Okay, good. So they are exercising the power in their own interest, using the resources to settle their cronies, and then even maybe inflating figures and what have you, so that people don't get value from the resources. Now, let's look at the observation. By the way, let me ask the question again. In the study by Aristotle, what did he seek to find out? What did he seek to find out? Isaac,
He seek to find out two things. One, the first one is the form. Is it what is the system that is being used to govern? Is it one person rule or is a multi rule? That is the first one. And then the second one was whether it is in the interest of the people, which you termed as genuine rule, genuine form of rule, or the second aspect, which is in the parochial interest of those, that is the perverted form of rule.
Fantastic. So those are the two dimensions. Thank you. But at the end of the day, what did he seek to find out about our government? What did he seek to find out about government? Yes, Portia.
Yes, Doc. At the end of the day, he was focused on the type of governments that will bring stability and effectiveness.
Good. So, which type of government will bring about stability and effectiveness? So he set out to do his comparative work, and then he used these two dimensions as you rightly mentioned. Now, these were the conclusions or the observations. He noted that a political system will be more stable and effective when its rulers governed in the long-term interest of the community. So when the rulers governed in the long-term interest of the people, that was what he found after observing all the 158 city-states. So here we are. I summarize it here. This is from your text, but I've summarized it here. Now, so you realize that he focused his study on 2 dimensions, the form, the nature and form of what? Participation. Okay. The rule by the nature of participation, rule by whether what one person, right? Whether it's by what few people or whether by what many people. That's the nature of the participation. Then also whether or not it was, the power was exercised in the genuine form or in the perverted form, right? In whose interest were they ruling? This one, in whose interest? So now let's crisscross the rule by and then in whose interest. Now you know the genuine form and then the perverted. Now, if the rule is by one person, let's say it's a monarch. So the rule is by one person, but he was ruling in the genuine form. He was using the resources to ensure society is better. They get good clinics, good roads, quality education, and everything. He called that kind of rule kinship.
Kinship. Okay.
Kinship, like our kinsmen. So kinship. Ruled by one person, but in the genuine form, kinship. Now, if it is ruled by one person, but in the perverted form, they were using the power in their own interest, amassing wealth for themselves and their families, very corrupt and what have you, he calls that one what? Tyranny. Are you with me?
Yes.
Fantastic. Good. Now, if it was ruled by few people, few privileged people in society, but they were using the resources in their genuine form to solve societal problems in the interest of society, he calls that one aristocracy. Aristocracy. However, if it was ruled by few people, but they were using the resources or the power in their own selfish interest, that's the perverted form, how did he call it?
Oligarchy.
Oligarchy. Ruled by few in their own interest. Oligarchy. Now, Aristotle here, if it was ruled by many, but in the genuine form, the genuine interest, he called it what? Polity. Polity, right? Polity. Polis, affairs of the state. So polity is something akin to the people, affairs of state, interests of the people, right? Polity. But here is the twist by Aristotle. You see, Aristotle has some weird views about democracy. So his views will reflect here. If it is a rule by many people, but in their own interest, in their selfish interest, that's a perverted form. He calls it what?
Democracy.
That is Aristotle's view. But it is not to say that is what democracy is. But if you also think that is what democracy is, well, you may side with Aristotle. So please note this, okay? Let's say if I design this table and then I leave out this, you should be able to answer. Or if it is objective questions, here I can set like even more than 8 questions. A rule by one person, but using the, no, I've not finished. Share this one. If it is NSMNQ, if I give the first clue and you answer, you may be wrong. If it is a rule by one person, but exercising the power in his selfish interest, how do you call it?
Tyranny.
Tyranny. Okay. So if it is a rule by few people, this first clue you cannot answer unless I have something, isn't it? If it is a rule by few people, by but then they are using the power in the common interest of the people. How do you call that form of rule?
Aristocracy.
Fantastic. So now let me ask you, mention 3 forms of rule that can make a government stable and effective over time.
Aristocracy. Policy.
Fantastic. This is a very wonderful class. Very wonderful class. So Aristotle observed that it doesn't matter the nature or form of the participation, whether it's ruled by one person, few or many, but the government will be stable and will be effective if leaders or rulers use the power in the long-term best interest of the people. Okay? And it explains there are many states which have monarchs, and sometimes the people revere the system. Okay? Because like Gaddafi, some people say, well, that is a non-democracy, but the way the power was exercised, so that were people, he had constructed some houses. Well, I have not been there, but those who had been there, they talk about how there was public housing for the people, okay, and everybody was okay. People could even get their house and would sell it to foreigners, and well, they would go and spend their money. But so that is, and that's a system will be stable and effective over time because the power was used in the genuine interest of the people. Okay, and so it will be Sarah. Oh, who is talking? Now let's also look at another typology of comparison. This one was done by Baron de Montesquieu. Have you heard of this name before? Baron de Montesquieu.
Yes, please.
Yes, where did you meet him?
Level 100.
Level 100. What doctrine or concept?
Separation of powers.
Fantastic. Separation of powers. Checks and balances. Baron de Montesquieu. Now, Baron de Montesquieu came up with another comparative work, and he observed that, well, there are 3 forms of our government. You could have systems or countries or states where the people or some of the people have supreme power. You could have a state where the people have the supreme power. And that one, he calls those states republican systems. So we mentioned that comparative politics is about assessing different cases. It could be countries, to know the similarities and their differences, okay? So he observed different countries. And he noted that in some countries, when you go there, the citizens or the people have what? Power. Or greater majority of them have power.
Hi. Good afternoon.
Oh,
Please, where is your WhatsApp?
Humphrey, mute your microphone, please. Oh, okay, it's Ibrahim. Ibrahim, mute your microphone. So in some countries, when you go there, the people have the power. And the people decide to vest their power into a people or a government or an individual to become what? The leader. And he calls those systems republican systems. Republican systems. So for example, when you come to Ghana, do the citizens, do they have power? The citizens, do they have power?
Yes.
Yes. They have power. That is why when it is getting to election, those who want your power, those who want your kokromoti, they come to you. Then they'll be weeding your area for you. Even if you are preparing banku, they'll come and take the banku stick and be preparing it for you. If you are a lady and then you have You have braids, they come and help you unbraid it, and all this because you have power, which they want. Okay, they come and beg you, please vote for me. I will do this because you have the power. Now, in those systems, the people have the power, they have the supreme power, but they vest the power into a body. Okay, and the people or the body have to come and beg, the people who have the power, so that they give the power to that government. At the end of the day, they come and account to the people how they have used the power, whether or not they should renew the mandate. He calls these ones Republican systems. Can you mention 3 Republican systems, my dear friends? Yes. Hello.
The presidential system, the parliament.
No, any mention countries that you can say these are Republican systems, that have Republican systems. Yes. Patrick.
Ghana.
Ghana, good.
Nigeria.
Nigeria.
And South Africa.
South Africa. So a country is said to be a Republican state when the people have the right to elect or select their own leaders. That's what Republican. When did Ghana attain what independence?
Oh, Lord.
When?
1957.
7th March 1957.
Come again?
7th March 1957.
6th March or 7th March?
Sorry, 6th March.
6th March. Good. And when did Ghana become a republic?
1960.
1960.
July 1960.
Fantastic. So the argument is that even when we became independent in 57, the queen, was still the head of state. Most of the things, could be done through the assent of the queen. So clearly, even though we were independent, we were not Republican in that sense. Many important things will rest on the table of the queen, or if you like, England, for them to assent or what have you. But by 1960, we were Republic. The people had the actual power. Okay. Now, he also observed that in some systems, only one person ruled on the basis of fixed and established laws, and he calls this monarchical system. So in those days, only one person ruled, but he was not ruling based on his whims and caprices. There are some fixed or some basic established laws which guide the way the power is exercised, or the way governance is done, or the way succession is done. Even if he's no more, there are somewhat established rules that will replace the monarch. Okay, and he calls that one monarchical systems. When you go to countries in the Arabian Gulf, like the UAE, Kuwait, Oman, Saudi Arabia, these are republics. They have this of monarchs, the kings. Richardson.
Oh, who is that?
Okay, I've muted. A third one is what he calls despotic systems. Despotic systems. In despotic systems, a single person ruled on the basis of their own priorities and perspectives. So in despotic systems, it's like a tyranny. A single person ruled, but there were no fixed rules or established laws that will govern them. They are the organ pata. Whatever they dream, they can enforce. Whatever they think becomes law. Okay, they rule based on their own perspectives and priorities. These are despotic systems. So that is a typology by Baron de Montesquieu. He identified 3 kinds of political systems. whether they were republicans, where the people had power and they could delegate the power to a government through election. Whether it is a monarchical system where power was in the hands of a single person who ruled based on some fixed established laws, or whether it is a despotic system where a single person ruled on the basis of their own priorities and perspectives. A third typology, my dear friends, is what we call the Cold War typology. All these are comparative works practice, where we try to classify what entities, or if you like, countries or political systems based on certain similarities or some patterns. Now, the Cold War typology, during the Cold War, and when we talk of Cold War, this was the period after the Second World War, towards the early 1990s, okay? Following the collapse of the Soviet Union, 89, 90s. But when was the Second World War fought, my dear friends? When was the Second World War fought? What was the period?
1940s.
So it was fought from 1939 to 1945. Okay? So from 1939 to 1945. So the period from 45, when the war ended, that's why you see here late 1940s, right? Late 1940s. So after the World War, the Second World War, from 1945, 46, all the way to 89 and then 1990s, the early parts, we had what we call three world systems. The Cold War was an ideological warfare, okay, between the US, which was leading the Western Bloc, and then the Soviet Union, okay, that's the Communist Bloc. Now, during this period, you see the Soviet Union and then the US. So SU and then US. These were the masters of the game, and each of them had allies. But as I said, it was an ideological warfare. The US was preaching democracy, capitalism, okay, and others. Whilst the Soviet Union was more of communism, okay. It was more of ideology, but not physical war between the two superpowers, okay. Although there were some wars that were fought on their behalf, but the two superpowers never engaged in some kind of physical bout. Are you with me? So the Cold War, I'm explaining the Cold War to you. Are you there?
Yes, I do.
It was just ideological warfare. This one believed in this, the other believed in other thing. And they were preaching this to the other parts of the world to get more people to be on their side ideologically. Okay, and so if you believe in their ideology, they supported you with infrastructure, loans, or some kind of any support. That was why we called it Cold War. They were canvassing for others. But here, now, during this period, the world was classified into three. We had what we call the First World. These were the wealthy, the democratic industrialized states, most of which were partners in the Western Alliance against communism. So this was led by the US, the Western Alliance. They were mostly rich countries. They were democracies. They were industrialized, and they formed what we call the First World, preaching democracy to the other parts of the world. We call them the First World. We also had what we call the Second World. These were the communist systems, okay, led by the SU, Soviet Union, that bloc, including most of those states that ranged against the Western Alliance. So we call those ones the Second World. We also had what we call Third World. These were poorer states, less democratic, less developed, and some of which took sides in the Cold War, but some of which did not. These were mostly the Third World, poor African states and others in the Latin America or Caribbean. Okay. Ajiman.
So simply put, can we say maybe the First World is developed, Second World is developing, and Third World is underdeveloped?
Yes, that's a good way to put it. Yes, fantastic. Okay, that was the situation at the time. But because it is Cold War typology, it is important to bring the ideologies of each of the worlds. The First World was mostly with the Western Alliance, okay? And they were against communism. And they had these features. Of course, they were developed. So you are right. But bring the ideological aspects, okay? The Second World, these were communist systems, and they were against the Western Alliance, whilst the Third World, very poor, less democratic, less developed. But this typology has ceased to exist. Okay, since the end of the Cold War in the early 1990s. Early 1990s, the Soviet Union crumbled. It collapsed. So you don't have that. You have that system. The Soviet Union collapsed. So today you do not have the Soviet Union or that bloc collapsed into separate countries. Okay, in our third topic, when we get to states, you will see that that was the fourth wave of state formation. When it collapsed, several states emerged from it, including Russia, Belarus, and then Ukraine. So the Second World collapsed. Once it collapsed, it meant that the Western Bloc had triumphed. The US and its allies, democracy had triumphed. And so that was the only ideology that was in good standing. There was no other rival power in terms of military, economic, and other things to rival the US and the Western Bloc. But today, you can't classify some states as First World and others as Second World. That typology has ceased to exist. Following the collapse of the Soviet Union, we don't have First World, we don't have Second World. Maybe today, some states that belong to the second, most of them have developed. And so it's not prudent to use this typology again, except that the Third World still stays. As for the Third World, because we have not seen any even profound improvement in their status, still lala sulala and all the things that used to. So the Third World is a term that is commonly used, especially I know of geographers, they use it. Even political scientists will use it. Third world countries. But first world, second world, it is something that has ceased to exist. Okay. All right. But my dear friends, in contemporary times, today, as we are comparativists, we are also going to compare. Same way our grandfather, comparativist Aristotle, did his study. How many states did he study?
158.
158.
156
We are also going to compare different states over 158 states because we are
Prof, please, I have
comparativists.
a question. Prof, I have a question, but I can't find the race by fashion. Please, I want to find out what is the difference between the Cold War typology and Wallenstein's world system.
That is a very fantastic, question. So it has some resemblance, okay? When you see Wallenstein, he talks about the 3 world systems, and clearly this has some connection with it, okay? It has connection. The 3 world systems, okay, the core. So then you can say that the core, that's the first world, isn't it? Right?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. If you like the periphery, these are the third world, okay? Except that today, because the Cold War has ended, so we don't use, that kind of arrangement. But clearly, you see that these theories came during the era, the golden age of comparative politics. Which period is described as the golden age of comparative politics? Which period was that? Golden age of comparative politics.
1940 today.
Okay. Well, but from the 1945, but clearly the 1960s, okay, but you are within the range, the 1960s. Most of these theories emerged. Serious comparative assessments came during that era. And so it depicts that kind of wells, the 3 wells, okay. Yeah, thanks for chipping that in. So you are applying your production to development studies. That is great. In contemporary times, we are also going to compare. We are going to use data sets to compare. We have what we call democracy index. This is a data set that has been collected by the EIU, Economist Intelligence Unit. We will use that to compare states, whether or not they are democracies or not. Even if they are democracies, what is the nature of their democracies? Okay, we also use data sets like Freedom in the World. This is collected and churned out by the Freedom House, which is in the US. We use these data sets as comparativists to compare different states. Okay, are we together, ladies and gentlemen? So that is the end of our first lecture on introduction to comparative politics. Any question? And dear friends, do you have any question for me?
Good evening, sir.
Hello, good evening.
My name is Ebenezer. Sir, then based on